I am Jarvis, your storyteller. Welcome to the Science Fiction Exploration. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel. The Interstellar Refugee Center on Station Omega-7 wasn't supposed to house anything more dangerous than homesick aliens and misplaced luggage. Yet there it was, in the furthest corner of the temporary housing unit. A cat that shouldn't exist. At least, that's what 12-year-old Juniper Hayes thought as she pressed her face against the energy barrier, watching the creature that seemed to be made of living starlight. "Step away from the containment field, young human," rumbled a voice that sounded like grinding crystals. High Admiral Zykesvoth's crystalline form shimmered with warning patterns of deep purple and amber. "That entity is classified as a Level 9 quantum anomaly." Juniper didn't move. Instead, she watched as the cat-like being turned its head toward her, revealing eyes that contained what looked like entire galaxies. "It's not an anomaly," she said firmly, her dark curls bouncing as she shook her head. "It's lonely." The Admiral's crystalline structure vibrated with what might have been exasperation. In the 3 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Commonwealth, he'd learned that human children were particularly resistant to concepts like restricted access and mortal danger. "Miss Hayes, your mother may be our leading xenobiologist, but that doesn't grant you clearance to—" He stopped mid-sentence as the impossible happened. The quantum feline, which had remained motionless for the past 3 weeks despite the best efforts of every xenobiologist on the station, stood up. It moved like liquid starlight, each step leaving brief afterimages of cosmic nebulae. Its tail, a stream of consciousness made visible, curled into a question mark as it approached the barrier. Then it did something that made every sensor in the room scream in alarm. It purred. The sound wasn't just audible. It was visible, rippling through the air in waves of golden light that somehow smelled like warm honey and distant stars. The security systems went haywire, displaying readings in languages that hadn't existed seconds before. "Fascinating," Juniper breathed, completely unfazed by the chaos around her. "It's responding to emotional resonance, not logical protocols." She placed her hand against the barrier, and the quantum feline mirrored her action, pressing what might have been a paw against the other side. High Admiral Zykesvoth's crystalline form flickered in panic. "Security Protocol Omega, contain the—" But before he could finish, something extraordinary happened. The barrier between Juniper and the quantum feline didn't break or fail. It simply ceased to have ever existed in the first place. The cat leaped into Juniper's arms as if they had been companions for 1,000 years. "I'll call you Nebula," Juniper declared, scratching behind ears that occasionally phased into different dimensions. The newly named Nebula responded with another reality-altering purr, this one transforming the sterile white walls of the containment area into a brief glimpse of a cosmic dawn. High Admiral Zykesvoth, veteran of 3 galactic conflicts and witness to the birth and death of stars, did something very unprofessional. He slumped against the wall, his crystalline form dulling to a resigned gray. "The Council," he muttered, "is going to have my crystals for this." As if understanding his distress, Nebula turned its galaxy-filled eyes toward the Admiral and emitted a soft trill. For just a moment, Zykesvoth felt what could only be described as the sensation of being wrapped in stardust and given a cosmic hug. "See," Juniper said triumphantly, her young face bright with the kind of certainty that only children and prophets possess. "Nebula's not dangerous, just different, and sometimes different is exactly what we need." The Admiral watched as the quantum feline settled more comfortably in Juniper's arms, its purrs now gentle enough to only occasionally bend the local laws of physics. He had a feeling that this was just the beginning of something that would either save the galaxy or give him the equivalent of a crystalline ulcer. In the distance, alarms continued to blare, now playing what sounded suspiciously like an ancient Earth lullaby in 4-dimensional harmony. Juniper began humming along, while Nebula's tail painted constellations in the air. And somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of the Galactic Council, a new file was being created with what would soon become a familiar header. Human-Induced Anomaly Report 1, the cat that shouldn't be. The universe, it seemed, was about to learn an important lesson about the most unpredictable force in existence. A human child who had decided to make friends with the impossible. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was not going well. 15 of the most powerful beings in the known universe sat around a quantum-locked table, watching footage of a human child, playing with what amounted to a living cosmic paradox. "She's teaching it to chase light spots," muttered Counselor Vex, their plasma-based form rippling with disbelief. On the holographic display, Juniper Hayes was indeed using a small laser pointer, creating dots of light that Nebula pounced at with enthusiasm. Each leap left temporary holes in reality that quickly sealed themselves with a sound like giggling stardust. "That's not the concerning part," High Admiral Zyxvoth reported, his crystalline form still showing stress fractures from the day's events. "The concerning part is that the quantum feline is teaching her back." The footage shifted to show Juniper sitting cross-legged on her quarters floor, Nebula curled in her lap. The girl's hands were raised, and between them danced tiny motes of starlight. "Look, Admiral," her recorded voice chirped. "Nebula's showing me how to fold space. It's like origami, but with the fabric of reality." A collective shudder ran through the council chamber. Grand Architect Philon, whose species had evolved beyond physical form eons ago, manifested briefly just to facepalm. "We must separate them immediately," declared Warmind Krev, their cybernetic implants flashing red with alarm. "The combination of human unpredictability and quantum manipulation is too dangerous." "With all due respect," Zyxvoth interrupted, "I don't believe separation is possible anymore." He gestured to a new set of readings. "Their quantum signatures have become entangled. Where one goes, the other will follow across space, time, and possibly dimensions we haven't discovered yet." The council chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Some demanded immediate containment, others suggested studying the phenomenon, and at least one member began drafting their resignation. None of them noticed the small alert flashing on their personal screens until it was too late. The doors to the council chamber, sealed with the most advanced security measures in the galaxy, simply forgot they were doors. In their place appeared an archway made of swirling cosmic energy, through which stepped Juniper Hayes, wearing her favorite space-themed pajamas and a determined expression. Nebula rode on her shoulder, looking somehow both regal and smug. "Sorry to interrupt," Juniper said, not sounding sorry at all. "But Nebula and I heard you talking about separating us, and we thought we should show you something important." Before anyone could react, Nebula leaped from Juniper's shoulder and landed in the center of the quantum-locked table. The cat's purr resonated at a frequency that made reality itself sing in harmony. Suddenly, every being in the room could see what Juniper and Nebula saw when they looked at each other. Possibilities, endless and beautiful, spiraling out like the arms of a galaxy. They saw Juniper's mind, uniquely human in its ability to embrace paradox, to find wonder in chaos, to love what it didn't understand. They saw Nebula's essence, a creature born from the spaces between stars, drawn to the warmth of human imagination like a moth to flame. "We're not just friends," Juniper explained, reaching out to scratch behind Nebula's ears. "We're discovering things nobody's ever seen before. Yesterday, we found out that if you fold spacetime just right, you can make quantum catnip." Warmind Krev's cybernetic systems crashed and rebooted. Grand Architect Philon manifested again, this time out of sheer incredulity. High Admiral Zyxvoth felt his crystalline structure age the equivalent of several centuries. "Quantum catnip?" Counselor Vex managed to ask. Nebula demonstrated by batting at what appeared to be a ball of condensed probability. Where it bounced, small gardens of impossible flowers bloomed briefly before dissolving back into mathematical equations. "The thing is," Juniper continued, her young voice carrying the weight of stars, "Nebula was lonely before because nobody tried to understand. Everyone was too scared of what they didn't know, but that's not how humans do things. We make friends with the unknown. We play with it, learn from it, and sometimes—" She grinned as Nebula rolled over for a belly rub. "We give it silly nicknames and teach it to do tricks." The council members watched in astonishment as the most dangerous quantum anomaly in recorded history pawed at a string of probability waves that Juniper had somehow tied into a cat toy. Each swat created tiny fireworks of possibility, beautiful and harmless. I believe, High Admiral Zyxvoth said into the stunned silence, we may need to reconsider our approach to both human ingenuity and quantum phenomena. He paused, watching as Nebula created a small universe in miniature just to make Juniper laugh. Perhaps what we've been missing all along was a child's ability to see wonder instead of danger. Juniper beamed at him, while Nebula's purrs created auroras in the chamber's air. And in that moment, the Galactic Council began to understand that they weren't dealing with a problem to be solved, but a revolution in how the universe itself could be perceived, through the eyes of a human child and her quantum cat. No one expected the dreams to start. They rippled across station, Omega-7 like waves in a cosmic pond, touching the sleeping minds of every being aboard. Engineers woke with intuitive understanding of 11-dimensional space. Maintenance workers suddenly grasped the mathematical poetry of quantum harmonics. Even the station's AI reported experiencing what it called digital purrs in its coding. High Admiral Zyxvoth stood in the observation deck, watching as distant stars pulsed in sync with Nebula's breathing. The quantum feline was curled up in Juniper's lap as the girl did her homework, or what passed for homework when your study partner could manipulate the fabric of reality. The temporal anomalies are spreading, reported Dr. Nix Quantum, the station's newly appointed reality adjustment specialist. The blue-skinned scientists' antennae twitched as they consulted their instruments. But not in any way that makes sense. They're creating patterns. Like a cat's cradle, Juniper offered without looking up from her tablet. Between her fingers, strings of probability danced and wove themselves into complex designs. Nebula watched with approval, occasionally batting at a particularly interesting paradox. Dr. Quantum's antennae went rigid. That's not possible. You can't play with quantum strings like there. String, Juniper suggested with a grin. Nebula made a sound that might have been a cosmic chuckle. Before Dr. Quantum could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. But these weren't the usual warning klaxons. They sounded like purring, amplified to station-wide scale. The stars outside the observation window began to dance. Status report, Zyxvoth commanded, his crystalline form vibrating with concern. Multiple dimensional breaches detected, the station's AI announced, its voice unusually dreamy. Reality is, oh my, that's rather pretty. Through the window, they watched as space itself began to fold like origami. Stars rearranged themselves into impossible patterns. A nearby nebula twisted itself into what looked suspiciously like a ball of cosmic yarn. Nebula, Juniper said firmly, in the tone humans usually reserved for ordinary cats knocking things off tables. Are you redecorating the universe? The quantum feline looked up innocently, galaxy eyes swirling with mischief. Around them, reality continued to reshape itself, but not in the catastrophic way the scientists had feared. Instead, it was more like watching an artist rearrange their studio chaos with an underlying purpose. Fascinating, Dr. Quantum whispered, their scientific skepticism warring with wonder. The quantum feline isn't causing dimensional instability, it's creating dimensional harmony, like tuning an infinite cosmic instrument. Juniper nodded as if this made perfect sense. Nebula says the universe was getting too rigid. Sometimes you need to knit reality a new sweater. High Admiral Zyxvoth felt a headache forming in his crystal matrix. Please tell me that's a metaphor. Juniper pointed out the window, where cosmic forces were indeed weaving themselves into patterns that looked distressingly like a giant stellar sweater. The quantum mechanics are actually quite sound, Dr. Quantum mused, their antennae now moving in sync with the swirling stars. By introducing controlled chaos into rigid systems, the quantum feline is preventing larger-scale entropy. It's like universal preventative maintenance. Through knitting, Zyxvoth asked weakly. Through play, Juniper corrected. She held up her hands, now trailing strings of light that connected to similar threads all across the station. Everything's connected, but the connections got too tight. Nebula's just helping the universe remember how to have fun. As if to demonstrate, Nebula stood and stretched, each movement sending ripples of possibility across multiple dimensions. Where the ripples touched, reality didn't break, it danced. The station's AI began humming what sounded like a quantum physics equation set to the tune of a lullaby. "We've been thinking about it all wrong," Dr. Quantum realized, their scientific detachment finally crumbling in the face of pure wonder. "We've been trying to make the universe follow our rules when we should have been learning to play by its own." Juniper smiled, running her fingers through Nebula's star-spun fur. "That's what humans are good at, isn't it? We don't just adapt to the universe, we make friends with it. Sometimes literally," she added as Nebula headbutted her hand affectionately, causing a small cascade of probability to rain down like glitter. High Admiral Zixvoth watched as the laws of physics rearranged themselves into what could only be described as a cosmic playground. He thought about the Galactic Council's fears, about their need for control and understanding. Perhaps, he realized, they had been asking the wrong questions all along. "Dr. Quantum," he said finally, "prepare a new research initiative. Project designation, Quantum Play. And someone," he added with what might have been a smile, "get me a very large ball of string. I believe we have some universe knitting to supervise." The message that arrived from the Galactic Council's Emergency Response Division was brief but alarming. Reality degradation reaching critical levels in multiple sectors. Source: Station Omega-7. Containment protocols initiated. Evacuation ships en route. Juniper sat cross-legged in the station's quantum observatory, surrounded by holographic warnings and emergency beacons. Nebula lay curled in her lap, seemingly asleep, but occasionally flickering between different states of existence. "They're coming to take you away, aren't they?" she whispered, stroking fur that sparkled with starlight. "They think they're saving the universe, but they don't understand." High Admiral Zixvoth and Dr. Quantum stood nearby, watching as their instruments displayed increasingly impossible readings. The space around Station Omega-7 had become a kaleidoscope of quantum possibilities, each more beautiful and terrifying than the last. "The Council isn't entirely wrong," Dr. Quantum said gently, their antennae drooping with concern. "The quantum disruptions are spreading faster than we can track them. Some systems are reporting temporal echoes, causality inversions, even." They paused, checking their readings again. "Spontaneous poetry in their computer systems." "The evacuation ships will be here in 6 hours, Zixvoth added, his crystalline form dim with resignation. "The Council has authorized the use of a quantum containment field. They plan to isolate Nebula in a pocket dimension." Juniper's eyes flashed with a determination that made both adults step back. "They can't. Nebula isn't causing problems, they're fixing them. Show them," she urged, turning to her quantum companion. "Show them what you showed me." Nebula's eyes opened, revealing swirling galaxies of understanding. The cat stood, stretched, and with a motion that somehow involved 5 different dimensions at once, touched a paw to the observatory's central holographic display. Reality shifted. Suddenly, they weren't just watching data streams and emergency reports. They were seeing the universe as Nebula saw it. Countless threads of probability and potential wove through space like an infinite tapestry. But there were tears in the fabric, places where the fundamental forces of creation had begun to fray. "Oh my," Dr. Quantum breathed, their scientific detachment crumbling in the face of universal truth. "The quantum disruptions, they're not random, they're repairs." Zixvoth's crystalline structure resonated with sudden understanding. "The universe is healing itself," he said, "through play." Juniper nodded, scratching behind Nebula's ears as the quantum feline continued to reveal the true nature of reality. "That's what I've been trying to tell everyone. The universe isn't just math and rules, it's alive. And sometimes living things need to remember how to have fun." Through the holographic display, they watched as Nebula's influence spread across space. Where rigid physics had begun to crack under its own weight, quantum play introduced flexibility. Where entropy threatened to unravel reality, cosmic games rewove the fabric of spacetime into stronger patterns. "It's like," Dr. Quantum's antennae twitched as they searched for the right analogy, "like exercising a muscle. Too much tension causes damage, but movement, controlled chaos, keeps it healthy. And humans, Zykesvoth realized, looking at Juniper with new understanding, are natural players. Your species doesn't just adapt to the universe, you dance with it. Before anyone could respond, the station's AI spoke up, its voice carrying an unusual hint of wonder. Emergency ships approaching, but there's something else. The quantum field adjustments are having an unexpected effect on their systems. Through the observatory window, they watched as the approaching containment fleet encountered the edge of Nebula's influence. The ships, built to enforce the rigid laws of physics, began to sparkle with improbable light. Their quantum drives, designed to punch through space, started to harmonize with it instead. "They're playing," Juniper said with a grin. "Nebula's teaching them how to play with space instead of fighting it." Indeed, the fleet's formation had begun to shift, their movements less military precision and more cosmic ballet. Equations became music, protocols transformed into poetry, and the very void between stars seemed to purr with contentment. High Admiral Zykesvoth touched his communication crystal, which was now emitting a soft, pleasant melody instead of its usual harsh buzz. "This is Station Omega-7 to the containment fleet. Welcome to Project Quantum Play. Would you like to join our game?" 1 month later, Station Omega-7 had become the most unusual research center in the known universe. The once sterile corridors now shimmered with quantum possibilities, and every laboratory had at least one corner dedicated to what the scientists called controlled cosmic play. In the main atrium, Juniper sat on a floating platform made of crystallized light, watching as representatives from 100 worlds learned to dance with reality itself. Nebula dozed nearby, occasionally flicking their tail to adjust the local physics when someone stumbled. "The latest results are extraordinary," Dr. Quantum announced, their antennae practically vibrating with excitement. "The quantum play techniques have reduced entropy in test systems by 47%. We're seeing healing in areas of space we thought were permanently damaged." High Admiral Zykesvoth, whose crystalline form now sparkled with tiny threads of quantum light, nodded in approval. "And the Council's latest response? They've officially redesignated Station Omega-7 as the Galactic Institute of Quantum Harmony," Dr. Quantum replied. "Though the AI keeps changing the name to the universe's playground in all official documents." The station's AI chimed in, its voice carrying the melodic quality it had developed since learning to purr. "It's a more accurate designation. Also, I've composed 7 new quantum equations in the form of cat's cradle patterns." Juniper grinned, watching as a group of traditionally stoic Vulnarian philosophers learned to play quantum hopscotch across dimensional boundaries. "See, everyone can learn to play. They just needed someone to show them how." Nebula opened one galaxy-filled eye and chirped in agreement. Around them, reality rippled like a happy cat's tail. The quantum feline had become something of a celebrity across the galaxy, not as a dangerous anomaly, but as a teacher of a new way to interact with the universe itself. "We've received applications from over 1,000 scientists who want to join the research team," Dr. Quantum continued, "including, surprisingly, the entire theoretical physics department of the Rigelian Science Academy. They say they want to learn how to knit with spacetime." "And the temporal distortions?" Zykesvoth asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Not distortions at all," Juniper replied, her fingers trailing patterns in the quantum field around her. "Nebula says they're more like stretches, like when you wake up in the morning and need to move around to feel better." As if to demonstrate, Nebula stood and performed what looked like a perfectly ordinary cat stretch. Reality stretched with them, and for a moment, everyone in the atrium could see the intricate patterns that held the universe together, not as rigid structures, but as an endless dance of possibility. "You know," Dr. Quantum mused, watching as a quantum probability field transformed itself into a galaxy-sized ball of yarn. "When I first joined this project, I thought we were studying an anomaly. But we're not, are we? We're learning how the universe was meant to work all along." Juniper nodded, reaching down to scratch Nebula behind the ears. Sometimes the best discoveries happen when you stop trying to control everything and just play. High Admiral Zykesvoth, who had once feared the chaos this human child and her quantum cat would bring, now understood. The universe wasn't a machine to be regulated. It was a dance to be joined, a game to be played, a song to be sung. Project Quantum Play is now the Galactic Council's highest-funded research initiative, he announced. They've finally realized that the best way to protect the universe is to let it teach us how to dance with it. As if celebrating this declaration, Nebula purred and reality purred with them. Stars twinkled in rhythm, galaxies spiraled in harmony, and throughout Station Omega-7, beings of all species learned to play with the fundamental forces of creation. Juniper looked out at the cosmic playground their small family had created, her, a quantum cat, a crystalline admiral, a blue-skinned scientist, and an AI that had learned to purr. "You know what the best part is?" she asked, as Nebula curled up in her lap once more. "What's that?" Dr. Quantum inquired. "This is just the beginning of the game." Around them, the universe danced on, healing itself through play, one quantum purr at a time. And somewhere in the vast archives of the Galactic Council, a file was updated one final time. Human-induced anomaly report 1, status, not an anomaly at all. Just the universe remembering how to play.